So, because of the teaching I brought last week and because of the feedback I got, I deem it fit to talk on how to know the will of God. Because from where we've read, part of the things that the writer speaks about is the fact that you must understand what the will of the Lord is. So there are a lot of questions about, Pastor, what is God's will for me? What is God demanding of me? Why did he create me? So there are a lot of questions on this corridor. People asking questions as regarding the will of God for their lives. Because it will interest you to know that there is a will of God for every matter. There is a will of God for your life as individual. There is a will of God for us as a commission, as a ministry. There is a will of God for a nation, for Nigeria. There is a will of God for everything. That's the summary of what I'm trying to say. I'd like to start by saying that the will of God is not the will of God is not your will. So God has a will. Man has a will. Satan has a will. John chapter anyway, it's part of, as I'm journeying through this way, take me to the book of John chapter 6 verse number 38. Let me prove this to you. God has a will. Man has a will. Satan has a will. It's like a cycle. And in the cycle, the one that determines whether it goes this way or it goes the other way is the will of man. So man is in between. Man is that entity that gives possibility to either of the will, either the will of God or the will of Satan. I thought the projector is alive. So if I ask you now, what's the problem now? What do you answer? What's the answer now? John chapter 6 verse 38, please. Jesus speaking, and he says, "For I came down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me. And this is the Father's will, which had sent me, that of all which he had given me, I should lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day. And this is the will of him that sent me, that everyone which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last days." Now look at where I started with. For I came down from heaven not to do mine. So Jesus, as a person, had a will. So Jesus, like a similitude of you as individuals. It means that man has a will. But Jesus is saying, I have come not to do my will, though I have my will, though. But I have resolved to do the will of him that has sent me. That's the will of God. And what is the will of God for him? Because he understood the will of God for him. The will of God for him is to reconcile man back to God, is to imprint upon man an everlasting life, a life that is not destroyed. So man has a will, God has a will, Satan has a will, but the breaker of the three wheels is man. And that was why when Satan came and tempted man in the garden, all that Satan wanted to achieve is to assess the will of man on his side. That was it. Because he knew that wherever man stands with, or whoever man stands with, such that if that party will prosper, or that party will succeed. So Satan by all means came and deceived man, because he wanted man to form an alliance with him. Because he knew that if man is on his side, he will be able to do so much. So when God came and brought judgment upon the landscape, you will see that God brought, the Bible said, and God said, I will put an enmity between the seed of man and your seed, and you and the serpent. Meaning that there will be no contact whatsoever. Because the alliance that Satan wanted to build or to form, God decided to break it permanently, to separate it permanently. So there were and again, that was why when he was teaching the disciples to pray, he taught them to say, pray that God's will be done on earth. So God is saying that if we can have man to stand on our side, our will be possible upon the earth realms. So the will of God begins to find expression upon the landscape when the will of man is in alignment with the will of God. Because it takes your will to ask for the will of God that is in heaven to be established upon the earth realm. And that was why that day that they were building, when degradation set in upon the earth, and they were building a tower, the Bible said, the Tower of Babel, the Bible said that God said, if we do not come down and confuse their language, these people, that thing they've set their hearts to do, they will surely accomplish it. All I'm trying to say is that man is relevant in that which God, in that which is called the will, the expression of the will of God upon the earth. And there is the will of God as touching every matter. Now I want to say this: the will of God is not on the sophists. And at the same time, the will of God is not hard. It's not impossible to come by. Because the picture, the way they painted it was, we are so scared that we used to think that it's impossible to come into the full will of God for man. So we think that the will of God is not on the sophists. But at the same time, the will of God is not